Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Comedy. My name is Gary Michaels and this channel is dedicated to new comedians. So if you're starting out in your performing career, I urge you to go ahead, hit that subscribe button and join the community. Now, it's about 30 degrees outside. I am stuck in a tiny cupboard. I am already beginning to boil up. So I am going to get through this as quick as I possibly can, along with giving you as much detail as I possibly can. And this is one of the most important videos I've made for the channel so far, because this is the most important and most effective way on how you can progress as a comedian right from the very start. The quicker you start to do this, what I give you today, on a consistent basis, the faster you will progress. And that is a guarantee from me to you. So let's get into it. So here's what you do. You buy yourself a second writing pad, and this pad is not going to be for jokes, routines, or stories. This pad is going to do one thing. Every time you open it up and write in it is going to be your progression session. Call it your progression session, because when we call something as motivating and as exciting as that, well, we're only going to be happy by writing into it. And if you're not the kind of person who gets motivated by words like that, well, then figure out how to get motivated by words like that, because it's only going to stand to you in the future. So here's what you're going to write in this specific journal. As I said, it's not for your jokes. That is done in a separate journal, perhaps at a completely separate time. But this new progression session, your new journal, is for your overall character development. Now, I am talking about as many areas as you can possibly think about. You are going to discuss in detail in this journal. Now, at the beginning and later on in your career, it doesn't matter. This journal will serve you the same way. It will always benefit you. Here's what you're going to write in your progression session journal. All about areas in which you are working on. For example, what style of comedy are you performing really well? What style of comedy, what style of jokes are working for you? But why is that style working for you? What is it about you that works so well in that style? And what kind of style of comedy does not work for you? The sooner you start to address these issues and answer these questions, the better you're going to be in the long run. Now, it doesn't matter if the reason you come up with why they're not working, it doesn't matter if that's not even correct, because as long as you're thinking about it in your own way and your own opinion, it doesn't even matter if it's right or not, because if it's what you believe and you act accordingly that way, and it actually makes a difference to you in the future because of what you choose to do and what direction you go in, well, you're only going to get stronger as a result of your own theory. So it doesn't matter if your decision or your reasoning for thinking on how a joke didn't work isn't the same as someone else's who might be more experienced than you. As long as it actually matters to you and you can change accordingly as to if the joke works or not works. If something works and you realize that it works and you understand why it works in your own way, well, then you can use that again and again and create more material like it. Because an interesting conversation I've had many times with different performers is I might be discussing why a particular routine is working for me or not working for me. And then they give their opinion and I don't agree with the opinion, even though they're agreeing with the overall fact that perhaps, for example, let's say a routine I'm doing is not working for me, and they agree it's not working for me, but we both have different reasons as to why. Both those reasons might be correct, but by me going on my own path and continuing to believe the same reason I have, well, as long as I address it and as long as I act accordingly and do something about it in the future, well, then it may as well be the only truth that I need to worry about. So it doesn't matter if you think you don't have the experience yet to fully understand all there is about your own character, because it's your own character. You've got every right to think about it in whatever way and whatever terms you want. It's your progression. So getting to it as quick as possible, even after your first gig, to write down all of the things that work for you, all of the things that didn't work for you, as well as that, write about how you communicate with the audience. Write down all it is about how you communicate at the beginning of your set and at the end of your set. Are you the kind of act that wins them over very, very quickly, or do you need more time? For example, I know I'm the kind of actor that needs a little bit more time than the regular person to win them over, and that's because I'm not the kind of actor that goes up there and does quick, punchy material. I'm more of a storyteller, and it takes a little longer for my style to get to the punchline, and that's fine. But it's fine as long as I know that's the style I am. And sometimes you see people and they don't do this consistent writing. They don't write about their who they are appealing to. They don't write about the kind of gigs that they go down well at. And if you don't do that, you're kind of blindly going through the scene, performing at gigs and thinking, well, that particular joke worked at this gig and it didn't work at this gig. Oh, well, hopefully it'll work at the next gig. But the trick here is to find out why did it work at one gig, and just as importantly, why did it not work at another gig? Because there is reasons there. And if you just take some time dedicated out to writing out the reasons, you will come up with the answer. And who's going to be the better comedian? A person who just blindly goes through gigs hoping that the one joke that worked last time is going to work again, or a person who understands exactly why the joke works and if it's not going to work this time. You see, that's the magic. You know, oh, well, this particular style is not going to work because maybe the audience are that audience I discussed in my journal and they're not going to open up to that. Or maybe the MC is this style of MC and I don't work well with that, so I need to address it. And what can I change at the beginning of my routine to get the kind of energy and focus I want from the audience? Or maybe the venue isn't correct. All of these things need to be addressed, and they can be addressed. And this is kind of like the magic secret. It's like stepping one step ahead yet again of not only the audience but the other comedians on the bill, because they're all writing jokes, endlessly writing material, writing jokes, just like you are. But the difference is a lot of comedians don't leave the stage and that night or else early the next day write out exactly what about them worked. Why did they win over the audience? Was it the tone of voice? Does your tone of voice change halfway through your set? Or are you more comfortable halfway through your set and therefore your body language relaxes just a little bit? Or maybe there's less tension in your voice because you relaxed a little bit. All of these things you should write down. How long in your set exactly does it take for you to finally relax? And if you know exactly how long it takes in your set for you to relax, well, then you can write your material around that amount of time. Let's say you find yourself very nervous for the first 15 seconds of your set, right? How many long, it doesn't matter. But let's say it's just the first 15 seconds. Well, then the first 15 seconds of your set, you should go easy on yourself. Do an introduction. Do one punchline that you know is going to work, that usually gets a good response, just so you hear laughter at the beginning of your set. Maybe the 15 seconds after doing this a few times will turn into 13 seconds, maybe even 10 seconds. But understand your set 100%, because if you don't understand your set and if you don't understand why jokes are working for you and why some jokes aren't working for you, well, then the audience is kind of on this 50-50 thing where maybe they will like me, maybe they won't, because the audience are going to open up better to a comic who understands who they are on stage better. That's why successful comedians don't take long to win over an audience. They know exactly how they need to present themselves. They know what they need to wear. They know how they need to hold a microphone and stand and engage and move their body language in ways that is going to appeal and in ways that they can get their delivery over in the best way possible for their character. And the only way they've done that is to consistently write down every single thing that they can think of outside of jokes in a specific journal that will enable them to tap into the deeper meaning and the deeper reason as to why they go down well on stage. So other areas in which where you can write is the type of venue you go down best in. Do you go down best when there's no lights and there's no microphone and you just have to use your own voice? I find that a lot of the time actors and people who have a lot of confidence in front of people go down well in this sort of scenario where the stand-up comedian tools aren't there. For example, holding the mic and the one spotlight in your eyes And so other people who have got backgrounds in other areas tend to be very good in these situations where you don't have those things. But yet they tend to have a harder time when you do have to hold a microphone over a person who's held a microphone all the time. Another very important area where you can dive into and write as much as you can on is, where is your character going? What's the goal here? What do you want in 6 months' time? Because if you can vision what you want in 6 months' time, as well as understand the kind of jokes you want to write and the kind of jokes that are going down well for you, and understanding how far you've come as a person who can communicate to an audience, well, if you combine all those things, then you can probably guess where you're going to be in 6 months. How are you going to conduct yourself? How much confidence are you going to have gained over those 6 months? You'll be a whole different person. But if you keep doing this consistently, writing, every time you finish off your progression session, you finish off by writing where you're going to be in 6 months, what kind of an actor you're going to be, what topics are you going to discuss, what kind of audience you're going to be able to win over the best, well then, before long, 6 months is going to pass. And every time you do the session, it's 6 months later. So it won't be long before the first 6 months from when you first did your writing session and you only dreamed about what you'd be in 6 months' time, you're going to pass that out in no time. And you will most likely become fully the performer you only dreamed about. And even if you don't get that far, you'll be 80% of the way there. And 80% of the way towards exactly who you want to be is 80% ahead of anybody who didn't do this writing, who didn't take time out from their joke creation and performance to just think for a moment. What do they want from this? And list out all of the ways in which you are able to communicate with others in a better way, in how you conduct yourself, even as far as how do you apply for gigs. What has changed from the very beginning when you were nervous about emailing your first open mic to maybe a year down the road you're applying for events at pro comedy clubs? A lot has changed. But you've got to understand how you've come to progress to that way. It's not good enough just to start emailing out and not understanding it. I mean, it's a good way of doing it, but it's not going to be good enough if you really want to progress. If you really want to become a fully pro stand-up comedian, you're going to have to take as much time to do so as you can. And what will have you a step ahead of the majority of other acts on the open mic scene at the beginning is to put time aside for your overall character development and really dive in to how far as an overall person you've progressed since you started performing comedy. I guarantee you massive success in understanding exactly who it is when you're on stage if you consistently update your progression character journal. And on top of that, you will also know, even if you've only had a string of bad gigs, well then you'll know why they didn't work for you. And you'll have a whole catalogue of ways that you do not want to repeat, of the wrong ways to do it. Like a whole back catalogue of the worst things that can happen and why they were the worst things that can happen. But you'll also have a back catalogue of all the great gigs you've done, all the amazing experiences you've had, even in terms of getting to know other people at the gigs, how easier it gets later on down the road. Also, this is the reason that people tell you to record yourself. It's not just simply watching it back one time and not doing much about it, or realizing what worked and what didn't work, but not actually putting pen to paper and dissect what you see. And the great thing about dissecting what you see when you watch a performance of yourself back on a video camera is because no matter how far you've come as a performer, no matter how much experience you have, I don't care if you've been doing it 20 years or you've been doing it 6 months, you always see room for improvement. No matter how hard you smash a gig, if you watch yourself back, you're going to realize there's a lot of room for improvement. Some jokes need to be told better. Some jokes need to be slowed down. Some need to be sped up. Some need to be taken out altogether. Whatever it is, you're going to see it. And so the more you're going to watch yourself back and actually watch yourself back while you're sitting down with a pen and paper at the ready to write out your overall character, your overall progression, more than just the jokes, more than just the routines, because that is obviously happening at a consistent pace anyway. This is something way deeper, and when done, you unlock a lot more greatness about you when you're on stage. So anyone who's ever achieved any type of success can tell you a million ways in how they failed before they got successful, and you should look forward to having your own million variations before you reach any level of success. And also, you should look forward to having all of your victory stories at the ready too. And the only way you can do that is by consistently going back to a diary and creating stories and reasons and why does things work, why do they not work, any area you want to dive into. Like, one could be the type of venue you work out best in and why does that work. Two could be the type of audience you go down best in and why. And then of course always finish with where you're going to be in 6 months. But you can have as many other things before you get there. You could be discussing 13 things if you want to spend 6 hours writing and really dive into who it is, because I find personally, maybe you're not the same, but if you start doing this, let me know in the comment section. I find writing this sort of material way easier than putting myself under pressure to come up with funny material to actually deliver and perform on stage, because this is something different. This is how we feel about our overall performance. This is how we feel about our decision to become comedians or whatever it is we're into. But comedy is all about communication and perception. We need to fully understand what we are doing on stage, how we are being perceived by the audience, in order to figure out what direction we are heading. But once we figure out what direction we are heading in, well, we can get there quicker because we know where the destination is. So go and start your writing session on your progression session right this second, and I will see you on the next video.